What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Baseball Insiders. It is Wednesday, early afternoon. The comments saying we go on at weird times. Happy to tell you that this will no longer be a weird time over the next couple weeks because we're going to be going live every Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern, as well as 3:30 Eastern on Monday, 3:30 Eastern on Friday. Lock it down. We decided to expand things for an extra show for everybody's enjoyment and knowledge and spreading of the good word of baseball rumors. We will answer any questions that you have today. Join us in the chat. Join us in the Discord. We've got a few folks in the All-Star chat who've already got questions ready. As MLB Deadline News wants to know, I will not be touching my mute button. I have no interest in doing that. If I cough, you will hear it. It is not worth the repercussions of clicking that mute button and having it get stuck. Not even a little bit. But in case I do get permanently muted and you simply do not hear me, Robert Murray, Fansided's MLB Insider, will carry the day and talk you through anything you need to know. Robert, thank you for joining me.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here with you. A special edition of a Wednesday show of the Baseball Insiders.
You're muted.
Wait, what? Am I? Yeah. Oh, I don't think I'm muted. So good job, Adam. But anyways, I'm very excited to be joining here today. We got a lot of stuff to talk about with qualifying offers, with the tender deadline coming up as well. There is a lot of stuff to dissect. I'm anxious to do it with you. Adam, how are you doing? Oh, Adam, I don't think Adam can hear me. So I am just going to continue solo for now. So one thing I've preached on this podcast is that I would expect a slow start to the offseason. I absolutely anticipate that still being the case. I think Soto could end up signing around the winter meetings time is kind of what I'm thinking, but we're going to end up seeing not much movement from now to about the winter meetings time. I'd imagine Thanksgiving is going to slow things down. In terms of the big boys, we'll still see some movement for sure, but I would just temper your expectations. That being said, I would expect at least a couple of trades over the next few days in terms of, because we got the tender deadline coming up. So I'd stay close to your phones for that. But I wouldn't expect anything too crazy in terms of big moves or anything. It'll end up being more bottom of the roster kind of stuff. So Adam, it's good to have you back. I was just kind of giving everybody what we're thinking in terms of the next couple of days.
Well, now the question is, can everybody hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
This is the worst. I hate this, but I'm back. Look, don't update your computer. Never do it. If your computer says, I'd like to update, you say, absolutely not. Not until I do at least through the winter meetings with the Baseball Insiders, because we just can't afford it. We can't be touching buttons. We can't be doing any of that nonsense. But thank you for bearing with me. I did rage quit the podcast. I am back. And if you aren't with us in the Discord where there are no microphones and I don't have to talk and I don't have to hear anybody, I just get to type, I'd recommend you join us, become a member of the channel, head on over, subscribe, and join either at the Rumor Mill tier, where you can talk to Robert and I between shows, or at the All-Star level, where you get, again, priority in this chat, and you get your questions in ahead of time. We got reserved hours to chat with Robert and ask him questions. We got one of those coming up tomorrow. So good benefits being in the All-Star channel in the Discord. We have some more Juan Soto suitors to talk about today, as well as get to your questions. I think you should subscribe to the Moonshot if you're not subscribed. That's Fansided's weekly baseball email newsletter with the Fansided MLB team, including Robert Murray, break down all the biggest stories in the big leagues with humor, insight, and behind-the-scenes info. And we do what we can during periods where we wait for the offseason to move. But if you thought the Juan Soto meetings were done after the Mets and Yankees and the Red Sox and Blue Jays went wrong, and we tried to tell you that that might be the case in previous episodes of the podcast, turns out the Dodgers hopped in on Tuesday, and the Phillies are reportedly planning to meet with Soto as well. So to open the show, just curious if you have expectations of any more surprise teams popping into the conversation. Are we capped at 6? Is anyone else going to try to outbid Steve Cohen? And what can you tell us about these current options?
Yeah, I would not rule out any other teams possibly joining the Soto sweepstakes. I think this is a very unique case of a future Hall of Fame player in just the beginning stages of the prime of his career, entering free agency. That to me is going to warrant teams like that you would expect, but also wouldn't expect. entering the Soto sweepstakes. We've even seen John Heyman and some others mention the Rays as a possible team that could be interested in Soto. I mean, the Giants have been mentioned as well. But the teams that we have confirmed that are meeting with Soto are, in addition to the ones that he's already met with, the Dodgers and the Phillies. And the Dodgers being involved in this, not surprising whatsoever. I know John Heyman reported the Dodgers' interest a few weeks ago, and that instantly makes sense. The Dodgers have a need for an outfielder, I should say. They are prioritizing outfield and starting pitching this offseason. I know they had the $1 billion offseason last year, but they ended up making significantly more money from Shohei Ohtani than they expected. And that gives them a lot of flexibility to do whatever they would like in free agency this year. And if that means getting Soto, I wouldn't rule it out. I know there's been the rumors of him preferring to be on the East Coast or like closer to his family in the DR. I know Heyman reported that it's not actually the case. So I find that really interesting. So we'll see. But the fact that the Dodgers are involved, I don't think with them being in, you can never discount them. And I remember in the early days of this podcast, even during the season and in the early parts of the offseason, I said it on MLB Network too, that I thought the Phillies would make a lot of sense for Soto. Mm-hmm. And the reasons I listed were, you look at the roster where you have Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, and you have the coaching staff with Kevin Long, the hitting coach. I think it makes so much sense to have Soto on that roster. And you have an owner in John Middleton who's willing to spend. You have a president of baseball ops and Dave Dombrowski who loves star players. All the ingredients were there, but nobody was mentioning them. And now they're finally involved. We'll see exactly how serious they are, but I think that makes a ton of sense. And the fact that you have the Mets, you have the Blue Jays, the Red Sox, the Yankees, Dodgers, Phillies. I might be forgetting one in there, but you have all those teams and they're all big spenders. This is Boris's paradise right here, because you have all those big spenders in, and that's only going to drive the price up more and more.
That's what we've got for now. The Phillies and Trey Turner, and the Phillies and Kevin Long, and you got that photo circulating of Soto and Turner's wife and Long wearing their Nats jerseys to a Dodgers playoff game in 2021. There's a lot of loyalty there, and if Dave Dombrowski, big spender, made the World Series in 2022, fell in the NLCS in 2023, fell in the NLDS last year. You know what he doesn't like? Taking one step backward every single year. So we'll see if the Phillies want to step up to the plate and reinforce their core here. We'll obviously keep everybody posted on Soto as we learn more, but it looks like the initial round of meetings, the get-to-know yous, are complete. Now the dollars can be exchanged. Will anybody outbid Steve Cohen? If they match him, will that matter? We'll have plenty more as time goes on this show. Yesterday was Rule 5 Protection Day, non-tender day, still to come on Friday. Just curious here if anything surprised you. Very few trades. We saw Jose Siri go from the Rays to the Mets. That's, some might say, a defensive caddy for Juan Soto. Some might say a troll. Juan Soto and Siri clashed last year when he was on the Rays and Soto was on the Yankees, and they tried to one-up each other with 45-second home run trots. Either way, good fit personnel-wise for the New York Mets. Everybody rejected these qualifying offers except for Nick Martinez, too. We were all over Pivetta on this podcast, especially on Monday. Severino also hitting the open market. So anything surprise you here? Anything you want to drill down on a little bit further?
No, nothing really surprised me yesterday. I thought the Jose Siri trade by the Mets was really kind of a savvy move by David Stearns, and he can be a cheaper alternative to a guy like Harrison Bader. He's making not much in 2025 here. He's very good defensively. He's got some pop. And it's another example of David Stearns being really good at finding guys on the margins here. And I thought it was a really smart move, didn't give up much in return, and he should absolutely provide some useful time in the outfield, quality at bats as well. So I think it was a good move by Stearns overall, and just the beginning of what is going to be a very busy offseason for the Mets and Stearns and that entire organization. But as far as the qualifying offers go, I was kind of caught off guard when Nick Martinez was extended the qualifying offer. I know he had a really good year last year, but I did not think he was going to be getting the qualifying offer. And immediately, like I heard at the GM meetings that he was going to be accepting it. Like I don't think it was a very difficult decision for Martinez and his camp to accept that. But Pivetta is going to end up being a guy who is going to be in a really strong position to get a multi-year contract, a strong one at least, in free agency. So I was not surprised whatsoever by Pivetta turning that down. And then you also look at it as well from Severino's case he's also going to get a really strong offer in free agency, or strong deal in free agency. And I thought it was a really savvy moves by Stearns and also Craig Breslow for extending both players a qualifying offer. I know when I dropped that Pivetta got the qualifying offer, a lot of people were really, really, really surprised by that. But that was a good job by Breslow reading the market. And if both players depart in free agency, both teams are going to be able to get a draft pick for them leaving. And that's only going to help those organizations going forward. So I think it was quietly really strong moves by both Stearns and Breslow for doing that.
And I know I'm going to set you up on this because I know what you want to talk about. You've got Walker McKinven, who's someone who you've advocated for in the past, leaving the Milwaukee Brewers for the Chicago White Sox, a quality control type coach. I mean, I think I want to make sure that you get this right. You think this is a big loss for the Brewers and a huge first hire for Will Venable?
Yeah, I think that was a really strong move by the Chicago White Sox. When I was around the Brewers, the guy that I kept hearing about that was just instrumental in a lot of what they do was Walker McKinven. And he had his hands in a lot of different stuff organizationally. And I thought when Craig Counsell ended up going to Chicago, I thought he could be a candidate to join Counsell somewhere because those two are very close and had a good relationship. And I thought maybe he could end up being the bench coach in Chicago. But it turns out he is a bench coach in Chicago.
Yeah, you're 100% right. You're 100%
just for the different team. And the fact that he ended up going to Chicago with the White Sox and being Will Venable's bench coach, I thought that was a massive move. It's going to help with defense. It's going to help with analytics. It's going to help with a lot of different things. He's a former player in college. He's strong analytically. He's got really good relationships with the players, and he is extremely smart. And to me, when I was around him and I was talking to people with the Brewers, they instantly were telling me future manager. And this is one step closer for him to do that. And I think his impact in Chicago with the White Sox is going to be incredibly felt, seen, and heard. And I think that's a huge loss for the Brewers. And I'm really curious to see how exactly they replace him. They got very strong analytic people in Milwaukee, but McKinven was a huge part of that. And that is a sneaky, huge blow for the Brewers.
And the question is whether the White Sox will be able to take advantage of his hire before he becomes a managerial candidate elsewhere. But still, smart move by Will Venable, beefing up that staff in step one of a lengthy rebuild.
And it's also, too, it's very, they ended up, I believe his role with the Brewers was run prevention coordinator. Mm-hmm. And the Brewers thrived on run prevention. They placed an incredible, priority on that because they always called their team or their defense or their pitching, the run prevention unit. And he's had his hands in so many different things. And I'm so fascinated to see how the Brewers exactly replace him. Cause that is a tough guy to replace. I think I usually am pretty complimentary for most moves, but I think this is one of my, this is probably my favorite move of the offseason so far. I know there hasn't been much, but that's a really strong hire by the White Sox.
A lot of great hires lately. We're all waiting for the player movement, but the infrastructure movement has been very impressive across the board. Good snipe by the Cubs this week. Also, good snipe by the Guardians, picking up a Rays pitching genius. Everybody improving that infrastructure as time goes by. Now, the personnel is next. I'm not a lot of Discord questions today. We'll go to the chat pretty quickly, but I do want to touch on Hunter asked, will Jed Hoyer ever awaken from his slumber? And Jed Hoyer has awoken from his slumber. He is just traded for Eli Morgan, one of those Guardians arms who, if you watch the postseason this year, was one of those guys who they would bring in and the announcers would say, well, this was sort of a, 7th, 8th inning guy last year. And now he's a little bit further down the pecking order, and he would come in and shut down the Yankees for 3 innings at a time. So there's viability in that right arm. Curious, any thoughts on the Morgan deal and anything else that might be cooking in Chicago to help answer Hunter's question?
Yeah, I thought this is a good start to the Cubs' quest to upgrade the bullpen because they needed to do that this offseason. That has to be one of their top priorities because they need to give Counsell more weapons in that bullpen so he can implement them how he ended up doing it in Milwaukee. And in Morgan, you're getting yourself a 28-year-old pitcher who, if you look at his last 3 years, he's pitched 50 games, 61 games, and then 32 games last year. And in 32 games last year, he had a 1.93 ERA. And he was a real weapon for them in that bullpen. And I think that is a strong start for the Cubs, but it cannot be the end. They absolutely have to go out and get some more arms. But getting someone from that Guardians bullpen, which was insanely strong last year, is a really strong start to that. So good job, Jed Hoyer. He is not done by any means. I'm just for the offseason in general. This is going to be move one of many or one of few. I would imagine. At least I would hope so for the Cubs' sake. But this is a good start. Good move.
Good move. Agreed. Excited to see what's next. Going to a couple of the other rumored names and the ones that are being brought up in the chat. Maikel Garcia. There was a little bit of Royals news yesterday that, hey, Maikel Garcia is someone who might be on the market. I saw some Braves folks, Foolish Baseball specifically, hoping that maybe the Braves reunite Ronald Acuna Jr. with his family member. But anything you're hearing on destinations for Garcia and who the Royals are talking to in general, because the India Singer thing may be fizzling a bit. We heard a little bit about Taylor Ward. There were some Royals-Angels connections. Either way, what are you hearing out of Kansas City?
Yeah, as far as Kansas City goes, I can't say I've heard any Maikel Garcia buzz or trade buzz. I think he would make plenty of sense for Atlanta. So Foolish Baseball, who is not foolish at all, I think that was a good shot by him. But as far as the Royals go, I would anticipate them having continued conversations with the Angels about Taylor Ward. That was a guy that they were really high on at the deadline. And I thought maybe at one point they could end up getting something done. But the Angels' high asking price really ended up kind of just that made that insanely difficult for the Royals or just any team in general to go out and get a guy like Taylor Ward. So I'd expect those two sides to have conversations. It would have to seemingly depend on the Angels lowering that asking price and being more realistic in trade talks for a deal to become possible. But that being said, the Angels are clearly adding veteran talent this offseason. So and they're trying to compete. So that could lessen the odds of a Taylor Ward trade even more. And the other guy that was connected to the Royals as well was Alec Boehm. And I'm not surprised in the slightest that he is getting mentioned in trade talks because I think he could end up being a guy who could be a good change of scenery candidate. And I know he's had some tough moments in Philly. He's had some really great moments in Philly. But after the Phillies were eliminated early in the postseason last year, they made it really clear that they want to shake up their core and that they think they do need to shake up that core. And we'll see exactly how they end up doing it, whether it's a Boehm trade or whether it's a Castellanos trade. I think those moves will have to depend on exactly what happens in the Soto sweepstakes. Because, that would be a huge salary that's added to that payroll, and an already big payroll, I should say. But I think a Boehm trade is possible. I think Kansas City makes a lot of sense, but honestly, so do a lot of other teams. But I think the Royals really have to place a priority on upgrading that offense. And the early indications are that they're casting a pretty wide net in doing so.
Alec Boehm, you love to hear names floated. Do you want to see some of these maybe get a little bit closer to the finish line? Maybe some other teams will jump in the Alec Boehm fray in the coming weeks. Another name who felt like a popular target, and again, the buzz has been minimal, but brought up earlier in the comment section by Coop, who I assume is not your dog, but might be your dog, and I'm actually not sure. But he's asking about Josh Naylor. Do we think he's getting moved? After the Guardians were eliminated, you look at Naylor's escalating ARB, and you look at him getting closer to free agency. I could see it. Teams like the Pirates, I think we discussed a long time ago, as a good fit for Naylor. Mariners, of course. Teams looking for a first baseman. All-star tier first baseman, but sort of on a relative budget because you don't have to sign him to a free agent contract and it's short term. So have your thoughts changed on Naylor at all since the end of the season?
I don't necessarily know. And it makes plenty of sense though that the Guardians are if they would consider a trade. I'm not saying they are, but the possibility of them considering a trade makes sense, because if you look at their history, they traded Francisco Lindor, they traded Trevor Bauer, they traded Mike Clevenger, they've traded other players before they had to pay them, I should say. And he is obviously an incredibly talented player. I think he made $6.5 million last year, and that number will only continue to grow after a year where he had 31 homers and had 108 RBI. Like, that is, he is a guy who is going to be very well compensated, whether it's an arbitration or just an extension in general. And he's not a free agent until 2026. And if you end up trading him now, you could get immense value in return for him. And I struggle seeing the Pirates fit, because I don't see them spending big in free agency or just adding a big salary to that roster unless something just really changes. So I would imagine there would be a market for Naylor. I wonder if a team like the Giants could make sense, because they do need a first baseman. I think it's really clear that Lamont Wade Jr. is not the answer at first base there, so maybe they could make some sense. But I don't know the likelihood of a Naylor trade, but I think the talk of it at least it makes some sense for sure.
Nat Gordon checking in, asking about Shane Bieber and the Red Sox. We, I guess, should probably mention this on every show we do from here on out after getting aggregated by Red Sox Twitter on Monday. But any more thoughts on that connection? Obviously, Boston has had some names in the past who they've been willing to give pillow deals to, who are currently rehabbing from Tommy John. Bieber not available for the start of the season. It seems extremely unlikely, but I would say absolutely no, starting the year on the IL. But any thoughts on Bieber's market? Has anything changed since we last spoke?
Yeah, no, nothing has changed. And I was kind of surprised that took off as much as it did, because, I mean, they've had conversations with Bieber's representation, but they've had conversations with a lot of players as representation. That's just part of the offseason. But the Red Sox, they're looking for meaningful upgrades. They're looking for strong, veteran players. And Bieber fits that category when he eventually returns from Tommy John surgery. And he makes sense. Max Fried makes sense for them. I mean, there's a lot of guys that make sense for them, but I would think they have to improve that rotation. They didn't really at the deadline last year. That was a mistake, but this offseason, they should have plenty of options in order to do just that. So, but yeah, there's nothing new to report there.
Another classic example of a Baseball Insider's clip going viral, where Robert is speaking and I'm staring at the camera, just looking like a person who has no, it's 50 seconds of Robert sharing an insight and me going,
hey, you know what? You do a great job of doing that.
Just borderline unblinking. So yeah, I mean, look, I get it, but if you're going to share a Baseball Insider's clip, one where I speak would be great. But for now, we'll let it slide.
Yeah, and also so we can avoid Drew having additional comments about this in there. Let's answer his question in the All-Star channel.
The floor is yours. He's looking for Padres updates.
He's asking when AJ Preller is going to wake up from his slumber. Preller is not sleeping. He is absolutely looking around the market, and he's having plenty of conversations with agents, with teams. I'm not exactly sure they're going to have that big move in them this offseason. I would not anticipate a Juan Soto kind of deal. He will upgrade the roster. He will add some players. But I think they got to be realistic in terms of how they spend, or more mindful of how they spend than they have in years past. So I would temper expectations in San Diego unless things really change. But as far as I know I've mentioned a Jackson Merrill, where an extension could be possible there. Nothing is imminent there. Conversations I don't even think have begun this offseason. So don't get your hopes up for any news on that front anytime soon. But maybe that could be a later this offseason kind of deal.
Definitely keep your eyes on it. Keep your eyes on it in the same way. Keep your eyes on my eyes when I'm blinking during silent clips. Yes, Cap NJ. Translate it in Morse code. I am giving you a secret message every time that you see a clip where I'm not speaking. Or maybe I'm just on mute because my computer broke again. Biscuit's back, though. So the early question saying, hey, is Biscuit your IT guy? I know he's gone for the week. He's back. He is my IT guy, and he's quite frankly doing a terrible job. But we will be back on the air. I can't promise I'll be back because, again, I apparently have no control over my own faculties or computer. But I plan to be here Friday afternoon at 3:30 for the third edition this week of the Baseball Insiders. And Robert is going to be in the All-Star channel tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern time, answering your questions. So join, become a member of the YouTube channel, join at the All-Star level. You get another hour of Q&A with Robert tomorrow. I'll be hanging out too, so I'll be there. But yeah, I'll just be blinking silently. Robert Murray, until next time, another good show. And I would like to get to the second round of Juan Soto meetings, please, so that we can maybe move on to the rest of the offseason.
No, that would be absolutely lovely. I cannot wait for the Soto meetings to end up continuing. But we're not close to a resolution there, not even remotely close whatsoever. But the fact that he's had so many meetings is exciting. It's cool. And all of them are continuing to go very well.
All the meetings went well. All the meetings went well. John Heyman even, he tweeted out, it was like the morning after the Yankees meeting. He said, it was the article he'd written the night before, and he added a caption that was like, "It went very well, I'm told, late." It was like, because I think he knew that everybody expected to see that from him. And he's like, "I'll give you what you want." But yeah, they do all seem to have gone very well so far.
Hey, we love that. It would be huge news if they went poorly. That would be rather insane. But no,
I'm working on that scoop. If one of them goes very poorly, I promise to break that on my Twitter feed.
All right. Well, that's why you have to have notifications on for Adam. Speaking of that, I also want to address one thing. Is the last time on the show, I said I had a scoop that was in the drafts. I maintain that. It is just not. I was under the impression it was done, but I am told that it is not finished yet. So hence why it's still in the drafts. So my apologies for the tease. I promise, as I said in the last show, it's not big news. But I wanted to address that on this show because I like to be accountable. But yeah, just remain patient, continue to have notifications on because that news hopefully will be mine sooner rather than later.
And one of my favorite things in the Discord is when people chime in after every small piece of news, being like, "Was that the news? Was that your news?" And oh, you'll
None
know.
of them have been yet.
Yeah, you'll know when it's the news. But again, yeah, thank you everyone for keeping track of that, and hopefully we'll have that for you soon. Until next time, we'll see you on Friday. Unless you're in the All-Star channel, join Robert on Thursday. Until the next live show, I'm Adam Weinrib for Robert Murray. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.